Hello, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the student responses to a recent survey we put out to those who sat the February 2023 management case study exam. So if you are yourself looking at sitting the management case study exam, perhaps this May, this is going to be a really useful video for you because what the students are saying in the survey is feedback on what they wish they'd spent more time on, what they found difficult, what they wish they'd spent less time on, and importantly at the end they're going to be giving us one key tip for future students. So if you are that future student, then I think you're going to find this video quite useful in your preparation. So this is a survey we send out after every exam sitting for the case study, and so this time this was for the February exams. Just to show that there's no bias here, we sent this out to a range of Estranti students and also non-Estranti students. So just over half of the students in this survey used Estranti materials to prepare for the exams, but 46.2% didn't. So this is kind of a broad range of students with different experiences, perhaps using different tuition providers. So the first question we always ask is, how difficult did you find the exam compared to your expectations? And what we want to understand here is really what are students' expectations going into the exam? How well have they been managed, and ultimately how do they find the exam in comparison? And it's nice to see here that more than half of respondents find the exam about as difficult as they expected, which means their expectations for the exam are being properly managed. Now, what you don't want to see, and what we have here of over a quarter of respondents saying they found the exam more difficult than their expectations. Now, there's two ways of looking at that. It could be that the students were perhaps a little bit naive or underprepared for how difficult the exam can be, and so they found it more difficult than they expected it to be. It doesn't mean the exam was more difficult than it typically is or more difficult than average. It just means that those students weren't adequately prepared, and so their expectations weren't properly managed. We've got another group here who found it much more difficult. So again, that's kind of the nightmare situation really, is going into this exam and finding it a lot more difficult than you expected. You're going to be in that group if you didn't do enough preparation, or if your preparation wasn't very effective or inadequate. Now you do get some, not many, as we can see here, the green and the purple, just one each of the respondents who we spoke to found it easier. So not many people are finding it easier, not many people are finding it much easier. So generally it's a tough exam. The majority of people are finding it as difficult as they thought it was going to be, but actually quite a big proportion are finding it harder than they expected. So don't go into this exam expecting it to be easy, because it's unlikely to turn out that way for you. The next question is what went well in the exam, and we leave this open so students can say whatever they want here. It's not a multiple response, but actually we do get a lot of overlap and quite some general points that we can take from this. So the things that went well for students were things like writing required length and structure. It's a very time pressured exam. Okay, you've got 3 hours, but actually in those 3 hours you do need to do quite a lot. So writing a good length is actually quite a nice experience. Being able to answer all the questions in the time allowed, that's considered an exam going well for this type of exam. Applying key knowledge to the situation in the question and planning time well. That applying key knowledge is an important point. It's no good going into this exam and just reciting theory from the syllabus. You need to be able to apply it to new situations. I know I wrote one correct relevant piece of information. The rest I can only pray I earned some marks. Timing was okay. Time management going well. Again, if you can practice mock exams and improve your time management, this exam is going to feel a lot nicer than if you really are writing up to the last second. Being able to think of answer points for all the tasks, which was an encouragement. This is to do with how well you prepare and your sort of revision of the key theory from the syllabus. So if something comes up and you don't know how to talk about it, it's a bit of a nightmare scenario. So being well prepared and being able to answer all the questions because you know all the theory is a nice position to be in. Writing a full script, understanding the questions, timing, easy to understand, etc., etc. Most of these points are the same, really coming down to things like time management and doing enough revision. Identifying the key requirements, that's an interesting one. That means basically understanding exactly what the question is asking you, so you're doing what the examiner expects, not going off on a tangent or misunderstanding what's been asked of you and writing something good but that doesn't answer the question and therefore doesn't earn you any marks. Some people getting some of their favourite topics. 2 questions were a walkover, so you can get lucky with the topics that come up, but the way to improve your luck there is to make sure you are well prepared and that you've done an adequate amount of study. So on the other side of the coin here, we have what could have gone better in the exam, or in other words, what didn't go so well, what were you perhaps not so prepared for. And again, the common things that come up here: time management, people running out of time, not being able to write as much as they would have liked given the time that is allocated for the exam. Bits of syllabus knowledge, so people having done some study but perhaps not enough study and topics are coming up that they weren't prepared for. Practicing more scenarios. This really comes back to sitting mock exams and trying to do as many mocks as you can before the exam, so you really are kind of used to working under time pressure and you have an idea of what the exam is actually like. Interpreting the question requirements better. Although they had practice, they struggled with this. So identifying your weaknesses in the preparation phase and really working on those is a good thing to do, so you don't struggle with those things in the exam itself. Not enough time management, more detailed answers, typing speed there mentioned. The faster you type, the better, the more you're going to get down. So that's a good thing to develop if you're not a particularly fast typer. Time management, most area studies were examined, time management, etc., etc. Particular bits of particular topics, Goodwell and IFRS 15, clarity, more time. So you get the idea. Many of these things relate to time management and how well people know the syllabus, and that's the most difficult thing about these case study exams, really. So what would they spend more time on? Given the things that went well and didn't go so well, what do students who have sat this exam, what do they wish they'd spent more time on in their preparation now that they've completed the exam? And you can see the top things here are, over half of the respondents would have spent more time revising theory. So the thing there is making sure that you're familiar enough and you've done enough study of the syllabus, of the management level syllabus, so that you don't get topics that come up in the case study exam that you really don't know anything about, and therefore you can't write about them adequately and you're not going to earn the marks. In second place, we've got mock exam practice. Probably the most valuable thing you can do is sit mock exams, and we always suggest that students sit as many mocks as they can. At Stranti, if you're on the Stranti course, you get 7 mock exams that are written specifically on the pre-scene. If you get through all 7 of those, you're going to be in a really good position. Time management practice, so again, you do that through sitting mock exams and getting used to that time pressure and writing under those conditions, and then typing speed practice relating onto that. Now, that's something I would suggest for someone who is perhaps slower than average when it comes to typing speed. If you work with computers a lot and you type most of the time, typing isn't going to be an issue for you, but if you're maybe slightly on the slower side, then it might be worth trying to increase your typing speed a little bit just so you can get more down in the exam. And then other key things here was answer planning. So planning is a crucial skill when it comes to the case study exams. What we suggest is you take 5 minutes or so planning your answer before you start writing it. This gives your answer structure, gives it a logical flow, and it makes sure you do a lot of the hard thinking up front. A lot of the hard thinking is done in the planning stage, so when you've completed the plan and you start writing, then you're not thinking so much as you are just fleshing out those initial points that you put in your plan. So what would students have spent less time on, again, now that they've sat the exam and know what was important? Typical first place result here is industry research and industry analysis. Now, for our students, we always say to them, you're not going to be examined on your knowledge of the wider industry. Your knowledge of the wider industry is going to enhance your answers. It will help you to do better analysis and to give stronger answers, but it's not something you should be spending a lot of time on. So really, it's just something you will do in the first phase of your exam preparation. You get the pre-scene. It's usually around 6 weeks before the actual exam date. And so if you're doing any kind of industry research, that will mostly be wrapped up in the first week or so. The same goes for pre-scene analysis, although not as many people scored this highly. This sometimes does score highly in something people wish they'd spent less time on. Again, because it's important not to skip the pre-scene analysis. It is an essential part of your planning and preparation. You don't want to spend all 6 weeks doing pre-scene analysis. You want that to be more or less wrapped up within the first week or two. Interestingly, a higher score here for revision of theory. I think the point to make here is that with the operational case study, you still do very much need to know quite a lot of the operational syllabus and the theory on it, and you need to understand how to explain it and to apply it. At the management level, you're moving up within the company slightly, and although you do need to know some of the key theory, you're really not demonstrating your understanding of it so much as you are showing that you can use that theory in business situations and business scenarios, and that you can apply it to novel and new situations. So while you need to understand the model or the theory to be able to apply it, you're not going to be expected to write, paragraphs and paragraphs on the, kind of the real details of the theory. So that's the takeaway, I think, from that particular stat. And so just finishing up then, if you were to give one tip for future students, what would it be? We've got a lot of responses here, so we'll just go through some of the points and see if we can get some general takeaways. Structure, that comes from planning, so really what the person means here is planning, planning your answers, giving them a nice structure. Managing your time well and Managing your time well and develop dynamic thinking rooted in theory. That's really good advice. It's hard to do. You do have to, you have to really work on that, but that's a good thing to aim for. Interpreting the requirements of the questions. That means understanding exactly what the question is asking you to do, not misunderstanding it and writing an essay on something that's not what you were supposed to be doing. Think of any out-of-the-box scenarios and ask for advice beforehand about what to do in that situation. Ask tutors about wacky scenarios. Maybe I think this person perhaps had a scenario they weren't expecting and kind of wish they would have done that, but that's not going to be the case for most students. Good writing skills are essential. Without sufficient theory knowledge, you won't be able to use them, so you do need to fill in your knowledge gaps in your theory knowledge, particularly if you're coming in through the gateway route and you haven't studied all of the syllabus. You really do want to spend a good chunk of your time getting familiar with the key management level topics. A good way to do that is to look at the top 10 issues first of all on the Istranti course. That will give you a starting point. The top 10 issues are the things you absolutely must study, and then beyond that, the theory revision series, which is a kind of condensed version of the full syllabus that will give you a good idea of what it is you need to prepare for and study. Do mock exams under exam conditions, mock exam practice. So yeah, really just, making that point that mock exams are a really, really useful tool, and you should try and do as many as you can before you sit the exam. Really good advice here, actually. Analysis of the mocks after writing them and taking feedback from written mocks. So whether you are just sitting the mocks or whether you're on the course and you are getting marking and feedback, whatever it is, it's really important to evaluate and analyze your attempt at the mock to see what you did well, but really importantly, what you didn't do very well, and therefore where your areas of improvement are. Work fast during the exam. Apply as much business acumen and pre-seen and unseen to your answers as possible. Mock practice, mock papers, etc., etc. So most of the kind of key points there relating to mock exams. A good one here. Relax and concentrate. Going back to that point earlier about taking some time to kind of just you get that 15 minutes before the exam starts. It's a 15-minute introduction. You can take that time to just calm down, take some deep breaths, and get in a place where you're focused and energized and feel good about what you're going to do in the exam. Okay, so that's the video then. We've looked at the student survey responses on those who sat the exam in February. So again, if you are planning on sitting the exam in May, then hopefully this was useful to you and it gives you an idea of what to do with your own preparation and the things to make sure you fit in and the things to avoid to make sure you're in that group of people who pass the exam in May.
Thank you for watching. I hope you found that useful, and remember to like and subscribe for more Astranti content.